Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. The old saying in golf is that you drive for show, but you putt for dough. And the same principle somewhat applies in the NFL. You can have a fantastic offense backed up in your own end zone through the opposition's red zone, and you can move the ball with ease. But it means absolutely nothing if your red zone offense, and in particular, your goal line offense, is complete trash. Most of the touchdowns that are scored come within the final 5 yards of the field, and those can be the toughest yards to pick up, simply because the amount of field that the defense has to cover shrinks drastically compared to every other spot on the field. On average, if you've got the ball inside the 10-yard line or inside the 5-yard line, you'll score a touchdown somewhere in the ballpark of 60% of the time. Maybe you'll see an inefficient team that only gets it 50% of the time, or even less than 50% of the time. Heck, maybe you'll see a team that has to settle for field goals every single time, and cannot break the defense down close no matter what they do. But I promise you that you will never see a team as bad down by the goal line as this one. Because in 1999, the Carolina Panthers put up a performance for the ages that more than 2 decades later deserves to be remembered for just how historically awful it was. Imagine getting down to the 5-yard line and closer on 5 separate drives and scoring no touchdowns. But it gets worse. Imagine getting down to the 5-yard line and being able to run 12 plays in total and not being able to pick up a single yard on any of those 12 plays. A performance like this has to be seen to be believed, and we're breaking that down here today. This is the story behind what has to be the worst goal line offense in the history of the NFL. Before I talk about the game in question and just how inept the Panthers were in these situations, we need some context to understand the importance and significance of this game, as well as whether or not this performance was an outlier, and how they were not just doing on the season, but in those situations. Entering the 1999 season, I'm not sure that anyone really knew what to expect of the Panthers. On one hand, they were absolutely terrible in 1998. They finished the season with a 4-12 record, which was tied for the worst record in the NFC West. They had the second worst defense in the NFC, and they were dead in the water right away after an 0-7 start. However, they got rid of head coach Dom Capers and replaced him by luring George Seifert, a 2-time Super Bowl winning coach, out of retirement. Seifert never had a losing record in San Francisco and won over 76% of his games there, so some fans were optimistic that he could turn around the Panthers after seeing the great work that he did with the Niners. As a side note, to learn more about Seifert's retirement period, click the card in the upper right corner. And through the first 6 weeks of the 1999 season, it was looking like a bit of a mixed bag. Even though the Panthers were below 500, sitting at 2-3 and looking dead in the water for the NFC West title hunt, thanks to the St. Louis Rams coming out of nowhere to be 5-0, the Panthers were playing some pretty good football. Carolina had the 4th highest point differential in the NFC, and were one of just 5 teams in the conference to have a positive point differential at this point in the season. The offense was clicking really well. They were averaging 24.8 points per game, which was the 3rd highest average in the NFC and the 5th highest average in the NFL. And over their 3 most recent games, they scored 94 points. Yes, the defense was still a bit suspect. However, the Panthers won 2 of their last 3 games, including their most recent one, a 31-29 victory on the road against the San Francisco 49ers in a game where quarterback Steve Beuerlein threw 4 touchdown passes in the first 3 quarters of action. Now, they had an absolutely monumental game coming up in front of their home fans at Ericsson Stadium against the Detroit Lions. If the Panthers won this game, then they'd be at 500 and would have tons of momentum on their side, having won 3 of their last 4 games. If they lost, then at 2-4, their season would be in some trouble. Now, by no means would their season be over. However, of the 12 teams to make the playoffs the year before in 1998, all of them were at least 500 or better through 6 games. The Lions were 3-2, but they had lost 2 of their last 3 games, had lost 9 of their last 11 games away from home, and entered this game as 4.5-point underdogs. In other words, not only did the Panthers somewhat need this win, but nothing about this game seemed particularly daunting on paper. By no means was it going to be easy, but it was definitely manageable, and it was expected that by the end of the day, the Panthers would walk away victorious and would give their fans something to cheer about. As for how it turned out, well, it was not great. Carolina got the ball first to start the game off, and it would be tougher to script a better first play than this one. Steve Beuerlein had a quick 1-step drop back and fired a screen pass to Tim Biakabatuka, who has one of the easiest catches he was ever going to make. However, he did a great job getting the yardage afterwards, picking up 32 yards. Yes, he fumbled, but the Panthers recovered, so it didn't matter in the end. After one play, the Panthers were already in Detroit territory. Later in the drive, facing 3rd and 10, Beuerlein stood in the pocket and delivered a strike over the middle of the field to his tight end, Wesley Walls. The Panthers picked up 14 on the play and got the first down. 2 plays later, the Panthers get creative and have Eric Metcalf come around and take the handoff. It completely fools Detroit's defense, and it's not too hard to see why, as this was the first time he ran with the ball since all the way back on December 14, 1997, when he was with the San Diego Chargers. Metcalf picked up 17, and the Panthers are in the red zone, orchestrating quite the drive to start the game off. And then, faced with another 3rd down, Beuerlein hit Machine Muhammad, finding him on a slant route, which he's able to get down to the goal line. 1st and goal at the 1, and it seems like the Panthers are poised to score a touchdown on a picture-perfect first drive. But before we talk about how this drive ended now they're inside the 5, let's talk about how they usually were in these situations. Through the first 5 games of the 1999 season, the Panthers had 10 plays when they were inside the 5. They gained yards on 5 of them, so that's 50% of the time. They held onto the ball on all 10 plays, so they never turned it over. And on 4 of those plays, they scored a touchdown, so that's 40% of the time. That raises the question, is that good? Numbers don't mean anything if they're not put in the appropriate context or there's no metric to evaluate their significance. So let's put these numbers in the context of one of the teams in their division and the team that had arguably the greatest offense in NFL history. Let's look at the 1999 Rams and the greatest show on turf. Through their first 5 games, the Rams had 17 plays inside the 5-yard line. St. Louis gained yards on 9 of them, so that comes out to 52.9%. The Panthers were at 50%, so the percentages are pretty identical. St. Louis, much like Carolina, never turned the ball over on any of those plays. And on the 17 plays that the Rams had inside the 5, the Rams scored a touchdown on 7 of them, coming out to 41.1%. Remember that the Panthers were at 40%, so once again, the percentages are pretty identical. In other words, through 5 games, the Panthers were almost even statistically inside the 5-yard line with one of the greatest offenses in NFL history. So anytime the Panthers get inside the 5 against the Lions, especially on this first drive, they should be good, just like they've been good all season. Right? Not quite. Because on October 24th, 1999, the Panthers displayed some of the absolute worst ineptitude down by the goal line that you're ever going to see in your life. First down, and they give it up the middle to William Floyd. He loses a yard, as he goes absolutely nowhere, getting bottled up before having a chance to get back to the line of scrimmage. 2nd down, and they try another run up the middle. This time, they give it to the much lighter Fred Lane. He also goes nowhere, as Robert Porcher just bursts his way through the middle, unblocked. By the way, what you see on the bottom right corner of your screen is a line graph that is cumulative and shows how many yards the Panthers have picked up during this game when inside the 5-yard line. Right now, we're at -2. Obviously, you want to be above 0. Let's see if the Panthers ever cross that mark or claw away at it at any point. 3rd down, and Beuerlein rolls out, but faces a ton of pressure and is forced to just throw it away into the back of the end zone, from the 1-yard line to having to settle for 3 points. The Panthers at least have the early lead, but that's a disappointing end to such a promising drive. Later in the first quarter, with the score still 3-0 and the Lions facing 3rd down, Charlie Batch gets picked off by Sean Gilbert, as he was looking for Greg Hill on the screen, but threw it way behind him. As a side note, if you want to learn more about the career of Greg Hill, specifically the bizarre incident from when he got drafted out of Texas A&M back in 1994, click the card in the upper right corner. 1 play later, and the Panthers were once again inside the 5, sitting with the ball at the 2-yard line. Play number 4 inside the 5, and they give us to Floyd. Once again, nothing doing, as Floyd loses 2. The Lions are crashing in the middle with ease, and it's reflected in the chart, as the Panthers now sit at -4 yards. Play 5, and finally, something happens in the end zone. Only problem? It's not what the Panthers had in mind. Beuerlein gets rid of it facing a ton of pressure and throws an absolute duck that gets picked off with ease by Mark Harrier. The Panthers come up empty-handed and squander some great field position with no points. Let's fast forward to the end of the first half, with the Panthers now trailing 10-3 with about a minute left to go and the ball sitting at the 2-yard line. Beuerlein's had a pretty good drive so far, completing 5 passes, and now he's got a chance to give Carolina an opportunity to tie the game and give them some momentum heading into the halftime break. Play number 6, and Beuerlein tries to find Wesley Walls over the middle in the back of the end zone. It's incomplete, although this looks like the first play that at least had a slight chance of actually working. Play number 7, and it absolutely seemed like Beuerlein had Walls open in the back corner of the end zone. However, Beuerlein got hit, and much like the last play, it results in an incompletion. Play number 8 and 3rd down, and Beuerlein can't even get this one off, as he takes a brutal sack to lose 11 yards. It seemed like Donald Hayes was the intended receiver on the play, as he was originally supposed to set a block and then come off, but the Lions played it perfectly, and the Panthers are forced to settle for 3 points, as John Casey hits a 30-yarder to make it a 10-6 game at the half. 8 plays in, and that line graph is looking pretty bad, with the Panthers now having lost 15 yards on plays from inside the 5, not once calling a single positive yardage play. Fortunately for the Panthers, they get a massive break coming out of halftime, when Terry Fair fumbles the opening kickoff of the half, and the Panthers recover. They're going to be starting this drive with great field position, and eventually, they're able to get it to the 3-yard line. It's 2nd and 3, and after they had trouble going to William Floyd and Fred Lane, they try a different guy, giving it to Tim Biakabatuka. And you would think by this point the Panthers would realize that going up the middle down by the goal line on this Detroit defense just doesn't work. But nope, they have not learned that lesson. He gets stuffed and loses 3 yards. 9 plays, and the Panthers have lost 17 yards. 3rd down and play number 10, and I don't even know what this is. Beuerlein was trying to get it to Patrick Jeffers, even though he was double covered and wasn't even in the end zone, and the pass falls harmlessly incomplete. Carolina is forced to settle for 3, as John Casey hits a 23-yarder to make it 10-9. With all these great opportunities that the Panthers have had down by the goal line, for them to be this bad was shocking. But it gets even worse, because now we're jumping ahead to the 4th quarter. The Lions exploded with back-to-back touchdowns to start the second half, and they now lead at 24-9 with about 12 minutes left in the game. If the Panthers are going to have any chance whatsoever to mount a 4th quarter comeback, then it needs to come right here, and needs to come with the Panthers facing 2nd down on the 3-yard line. Play number 11, and Beuerlein tries to go to Wesley Walls, but because of the great coverage and the pressure, which is an all too common theme at this point, the pass falls incomplete, and is thrown into the stands. Play number 12 in what is absolutely 4-down territory, and it's the same old story. Pressure up the middle, Beuerlein can't do anything, and he fumbles and turns it over, with Ron Rice forcing the fumble and Tracy Scroggins recovering. That's pretty much the ballgame, as the Lions would hold on and win by a final score of 24-9. Before I dive into the post-game quotes, let's just do a quick recap here of how the Panthers did inside the 5. Remember that entering this game, they had 10 plays, they gained yards on 50% of them, they only lost yards on 10% of them, and they had scored a touchdown on 40% of them. In this game, they had 12 plays inside the 5-yard line. They gained yards on none of them. The most productive plays that they had down here were the incomplete passes. 8 passing plays resulted in Beuerlein going 0 for 6 with an interception and 2 sacks. 4 rushing plays resulted in a loss of 6 yards, where literally every single run lost at least 1 yard. Not once did it have a run that got back to the line of scrimmage. If the Panthers called a quarterback sneak, it would have been their longest run of the day in that situation by a mile. In total, the Panthers on 12 plays lost yards on 6 of them, gained yards on none of them, turned it over on 2 of them, and lost 29 yards total. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that losing 29 yards on 12 plays and not scoring a single touchdown when you're right by the goal line is very bad. And it's not too hard to see why the Panthers lost this game. And after the game, all of the talk was about the frustrations that the Panthers had down in those goal line situations. Beuerlein said on the inefficiency of his team, "It's embarrassing. To be able to get the ball down there is not an easy thing to do. When you get it down there, you're not going to get it in every time, but you've got to at least look like you know what you're doing. We did not execute well enough to give anybody the impression that we knew what we were doing." Incredibly harsh words from Beuerlein, but incredibly accurate, because with how bad their blocking was down there, yeah, it truly did not look like they knew what they were doing. William Floyd, who got stuffed both times he got the ball down there, said that the game plan was all wrong, saying, "We had a bunch of trick plays in different formations where we were trying to trick the defense, but it didn't work." And head coach George Seifert shouldered a lot of the blame, saying on the inefficiencies down by the 5, "I am a little beside myself from what happened. We have been executing extremely well in the red zone, maybe as well as any team I've been with. And today, we self-destructed as much as you could down there. Maybe as a head coach, I kind of got carried away with the play selection or the numbers of things we tried to do. We might have tried to get a little too cute with them." But perhaps the oddest part about this abysmal performance was the fact that not once on one of those 5-yard plays did I say the name Machine Muhammad. Yeah, remember him? The guy who had nearly 1,000 yards in 1998 and through the first 5 games of 1999 was on pace for 96 receptions and 1,700 yards? The guy who had 30 receptions for 531 yards over the first 5 games of the season, he was on the sideline for most of those 5-yard plays. And safe to say, he was livid about this, especially considering how bad the Panthers were on this day. They really could have used him. He said on his benching in those spots, "I wanted to be more active in the red zone. I wanted to be more involved down there with some touchdowns. But it's part of being a team player. They've got to accept what goes on down there." Beuerlein didn't exactly bash Seifert for his play calling and for not having Muhammad out there, but when asked about why he was on the sideline, he said, "I'm not touching that one. You know me better than that. We run the plays that are called. It's up to the coaches to call them." Make of that quote what you will. I genuinely do not think it's possible to see a goal line offense this bad. It's not even the fact that they lost 29 yards on 12 plays, because as bad as that is, I could see a team taking 3 bad sacks and surpassing that. It's not even the fact that they turned it over twice, because as bad as that is, that happens. It's the fact that on those 12 plays, not once did they pick up a yard. Every play either got nothing or lost yards. Every single run left the team further behind the line of scrimmage than they were before. Every passing play made Beuerlein seem like he was fighting for his life back there. Everything about the George Seifert tenure was a disaster, and perhaps no sequence and no game exemplified that more than this one. Because on this October day, every time the Panthers were down by the goal line, and every time they tried to keep pounding, it went absolutely nowhere. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.